Poor prof. He didn't realize you actually need a competent team to use the Spontoon properly, let alone more than just him against a cavalry charge. Alas, let's dig into the good old Spontoon.
Hold steady!
Now this weapon, back in the Napoleonic era, was basically a way to guide your men into forming squares, and it's also a mini pike. And those squares were used against cavalry charges, like this one, Marshal Ney's charge from Waterloo. The British all formed squares. Only for 500 francs, the Spontoon is reasonably inexpensive. It deals 30 damage with a penetration of 3 and a range of 7 studs. The swing rate varies on direction, worst being up at 1.15 seconds, then the side swing for 1.08 seconds, and the best swing being the downswing from 0.57 seconds. And since it replaces the charge, it needs an ability, and that is the Holdfast. I go more in depth on the charge in my saber video, linked in the top right. Now this weapon can also charge like a bayonet or lance, which is great, but it can also be used in another officer's Holdfast, which is also great. This meter goes up like the officer's saber by killing zombies. It takes around 20 zombies on average to fill the meter up all the way. Unfortunately, the average Gus and Blackpowder player cannot comprehend how the Spontoon works, and so this is probably the most important part of the video. So, when you start a Holdfast, the most important part is to stand still. The player is actually forced to stand while playing the animation, but you can still swing the Spontoon. You're also highlighted green for your teammates to spot you. People cannot comprehend this for some reason, that you have to stand still. Like, I get sometimes in objective maps, you can't stand still, you gotta keep moving, you gotta retreat, something like that. But the whole point of the Holdfast is to be a stationary defense. When activated, a cool highlighted box goes around the officer for 20 seconds. The players should get in front and form a square, like the shape. No way, the shape that's actually outlining the officer, you have to make that shape? That's crazy. And the people who do that enjoy a 33% damage resistance to melee and explosive attacks. But the real benefit is if you have a lance, bayonet, or Spontoon equipped. It becomes a stationary version of a charge, called a brace. You don't need to swing your weapon in this state, just aim your shiny metal stick at the zombies and they all die. Just keep your distance from bombers since they can still damage you a little bit. If your team is severely lacking lancers, bayonet infantry, and Spontoon officers, the Holdfast is far less effective, and 9 times out of 10 the charge is a far superior ability. And where do we want to use this weapon? Considering it is a stationary ability, the best spots are always at stationary defense points. Think the capstan in San Sebastian, the finale in Catacombs de Paris, or the wall in Leipzig. If it is a stationary defense point, it is your best bet to deploy the Holdfast. Just please don't do it when you intend on walking around, that's really dumb. And after you use the Holdfast, it has a 30-second cooldown. Now onto the classes you can use the Spontoon with. With Officer, it is pretty versatile. Not as versatile as the Saber, but we'll get into that. You can use it alongside other Holdfasts and with charges, and it's always good to have a long stick to poke and prod at rather than getting up close and personal. Similarly to the lance and bayonet, you can kill zombies through walls, and the extra resistances can really help with your survivability, that's in the Holdfast. But alas, its limiting factor is unfortunately your teammates and how capable they are at standing still, and equipping the only weapons that are really effective with it. 90% of the time, they don't. It's definitely a weapon that requires your team to have certain other weapons equipped to work well. Mostly the same story for Cuirass Officer. I find the charge to be a little more useful for the Cuirass Officer, simply so you have that movement speed increase because you're already slowed down. But the Holdfast also works well with the Cuirass because you're basically the tank class. Again, it really comes down to what your team has equipped. The armor does make meleeing bombers way more viable, and really working with the defense stats that you're given can make you very hefty, especially in the Holdfast. Just also note that threats like bombers and Zero Seers can disperse your teammates. They don't really know that bombers can't cross the square, and Zero Seers, like, if you have your bayonet pointed, no longer there, dead. So the Spontoon is a pretty good weapon. Not as good as the Saber, I'd say, since the Saber is way more versatile and works way better in most team-based settings you'll find in Guts or Blackpowder. If you know your team will actually cooperate, has the good weapons, like the musket, alarms, other Spontoon officers, then that would be good. It's a good pick. But the better option, hands down, is the Officer's Saber.